Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
And today we're going kind of back in time a little bit to explore the work of, I guess you could say, a true advertising legend, Eugene Schwartz.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've got here is a website showcasing like a whole collection of his ads.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's like opening up a time capsule, like filled with, marketing gold. Get this guy Schwartz boasted an 85% success rate with his ads.
Wow.
85%, in the world of advertising.
Yeah, that's unheard of.
That's practically unheard of.
Yeah, you just don't see that very often.
No,
it's remarkable. And what's even more interesting is I think the variety of his work. We're not just talking about, catchy headlines, although there are plenty of those, but like entire ad campaigns for some really major players in direct response marketing.
Right, okay.
Companies like Rodale, Boardroom Reports.
Familiar with those?
Yeah. And this website is really making the argument that like studying these ads is like getting a masterclass in persuasive writing.
Okay, so that's a big claim right there.
It is.
So, why should we care about ads written like decades ago?
Right.
Are they really relevant in today's digital world?
Yeah.
What can someone who's, say, designing a website or sending out, email newsletters, what can they learn from a guy who wrote like print ads in the Mad Men era?
That's a great question. And, the website actually addresses that pretty directly.
Okay.
They argue that the principles of persuasion are timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Human psychology hasn't changed that much.
Right.
And Schwartz really understood how to tap into those like deep-seated desires and anxieties that drive us to act.
Okay, so we're talking about more than just clever wordplay here.
Yeah.
This is about understanding like the deeper psychology behind what makes people tick.
Exactly. And I think to really see that in action, we need to go beyond just the headlines, as tempting as they are, and look at the structure of his full ads. Like, he had a way of building an argument, anticipating objections, and ultimately leading the reader to a desired outcome.
So let's look at some examples.
Okay.
This collection has 204 headlines alone.
Whoa.
Ranging from the wildly provocative, 71-year-old man has sexual congress 5 times a day.
Definitely grabs your attention, doesn't it?
It does.
But then you also have headlines like, how to beat the giant food companies and save up to 95 cents on every dollar.
And that one feels particularly relevant today.
Right.
With inflation and all.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did he use these headlines to actually, draw people into the rest of the ad?
Right.
What kind of strategies was he using?
Well, in one ad for a book on memory improvement, the headline reads, "Give me one evening and I'll give you a push-button memory."
Okay.
It's bold, it promises a desirable outcome, and it creates curiosity about this so-called push-button memory. And then in the body of the ad, he goes on to paint a picture of the reader effortlessly remembering names, dates important information. He addresses the reader's potential skepticism by offering testimonials and even a money-back guarantee.
Wow.
So, he builds this compelling case, making the reader really want that push-button memory.
It's like he's creating a world where your problems are solved.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is buy this product to get there.
That's exactly it. He's not just selling a product.
Right.
He's selling a solution, a better version of yourself.
Now, one thing that stood out to me on this website was the mention of multiple versions of ads with the same headline.
Right.
What's the significance of that?
That's one of the things that makes this collection so valuable, I think.
Yep.
It lets us peek behind the curtain and see Schwartz's process. He was constantly testing and refining his message, tweaking the copy, the layout, even the visuals to see what resonated most with his audience.
So even a legendary copywriter like Schwartz wasn't afraid to experiment.
Nope.
That's kind of reassuring, actually.
Yeah.
It means even the best are always learning and evolving.
Absolutely. And for someone studying his work, it's fascinating to see how these subtle changes can impact an ad's effectiveness. You might have one version that focuses more on logic and reasoning, while another uses more emotional language and storytelling.
And by comparing those different approaches, you can start to understand what works best in different situations.
Precisely. It's like having a laboratory for persuasive writing.
Wow.
And you get to analyze the results of each experiment.
I like that.
Yeah.
So now this collection is being marketed as a swipe file, specifically for copywriters and marketers. Can you explain what a swipe file is?
Here.
And how someone might use it ethically and effectively?
A swipe file is basically a collection of successful marketing materials that copywriters and marketers use for inspiration and to study effective techniques.
Okay.
Now, the ethical part comes in when we talk about how to use it.
Right.
Simply copying someone else's work verbatim is obviously not okay.
Right. Yeah. That would be plagiarism and probably wouldn't get you very far anyway.
Exactly. The real value of a swipe file like this is in understanding the underlying principles.
Okay.
The strategy behind the words. Like, why did Schwartz choose this particular phrase? Why did he structure the argument this way?
So it's more about learning from a master craftsman than just copying their designs.
Think of it as dissecting a brilliant piece of machinery.
Okay.
You're taking it apart to see how all the gears and levers work together, not just trying to replicate the exterior.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
It makes it clear that you're not trying to steal someone else's work.
Right.
But rather understand the thought process behind it so you can apply those same principles to your own creative endeavors.
And that's where the real power of studying someone like Schwartz comes in.
Okay.
He wasn't just throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck.
Right.
He was a meticulous craftsman who understood the psychology of persuasion.
And this website really emphasizes that idea that principles never change. Human desires and motivations haven't really changed that much over time, right?
Right. Technology may change, platforms may change, but the core principles of persuasive communication remain remarkably consistent.
So even though we're talking about ads from a different era, the lessons we can learn from them are still relevant today.
Absolutely. And in some ways, studying older ads like this can be even more valuable because they strip away all the distractions of modern marketing.
Yeah.
You're left with the raw essence of persuasive writing.
It's like getting a glimpse into the fundamental building blocks of effective communication.
That's a great way to put it. And those building blocks are what we're going to explore further in this deep dive.
All right, so we've established that Eugene Schwartz was a master of his craft and that his work is still relevant today, even for people who aren't necessarily in the advertising industry.
Right.
But this collection isn't just about headlines and ad copy, right?
Yeah.
It also includes some pretty intriguing bonus materials.
It does indeed. And some of these bonuses offer even deeper insights into Schwartz's process and techniques. There's one in particular that I think you'll find fascinating.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, right? There's this bonus called Eugene Schwartz LAI at Rodale Press.
Yeah.
It's a recording of him actually talking about his copywriting process. It's like getting a backstage pass to the mind of a copywriting legend.
You know, it's amazing. It is. He talks about how he approaches writing copy, how he structures his time, and how he overcomes writer's block. It's a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to learn from the best.
It's like having a direct line to his creative process.
Yeah.
And there's another bonus that caught my eye. 127 winning headlines by Eugene M. Schwartz and Lawrence Bernstein talk about headline inspiration.
This bonus is pure gold for anyone looking for headline ideas.
Yeah.
It breaks down different types of headlines and shows you how to craft ones that are attention-grabbing, benefit-driven, and targeted to your audience.
So we've got the swipe file, the live recording, and a treasure trove of winning headlines. It's like a copywriter's dream toolkit. But before we get too carried away with the practical stuff, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. Schwartz's ability to tap into what he called mass desires. What do you mean by that?
Schwartz believed that certain deep-seated desires are common to almost everyone, regardless of their age, background, or income level. Things like the desire for wealth, health, love, and happiness.
Okay, those are pretty universal. So how did he use that insight in his advertising?
Well, he was a master at identifying those desires and then crafting his copy to speak directly to them. He didn't just sell products. He sold solutions to those deep-seated longings.
Can you give us a specific example?
Sure. Let's take the ad for the memory improvement book we discussed earlier. The headline, "Give me one evening and I'll give you a push-button memory," isn't just about remembering facts and figures. It taps into the desire for self-improvement, the longing for a sharper mind and a better memory. It speaks to the frustration of forgetting important information and the desire for greater confidence and control in social and professional settings.
So it's not just about listing the features and benefits.
Right.
It's about connecting those features and benefits to a deeper emotional need.
Exactly. He understood that people buy based on emotion and then justify their decisions with logic. His copy was designed to evoke those emotions, to make people feel something, to create a connection that went beyond just the product itself.
Now, the website mentions that Schwartz achieved, amazing results while working within the constraints of direct response marketing. Can you explain what that means and why it's significant?
Direct response marketing is all about getting a measurable response from your audience. It's about tracking results, testing different approaches, and constantly refining your message to get the most bang for your buck.
So it's not just about creating a clever ad.
Right.
It's about making sure that ad translates into sales leads or whatever the desired outcome is.
Precisely, and this is where Schwartz excelled. He wasn't just a creative genius, he was a results-driven marketer who understood the importance of data and measurement. He knew that every word, every image, every layout decision had to contribute to the overall goal of getting people to take action.
That makes sense, especially in the world of direct mail and print advertising, where you're paying for every inch of space and every postage stamp.
Right.
You need to make sure your message is as effective as possible.
Exactly. And while the specific metrics may have changed, the underlying principle of focusing on measurable results is just as relevant in today's digital marketing landscape.
It sounds like Schwartz was ahead of his time in that regard.
Yeah.
His emphasis on data and testing aligns perfectly with the way we approach marketing today.
He truly was, and that's one of the reasons why studying his work is so valuable, even if you're not specifically interested in direct response marketing. The principles he used are adaptable to any form of communication where you're trying to persuade or influence someone.
All right, we've talked about Schwartz's ability to tap into mass desires, his mastery of direct response marketing, and the enduring relevance of his work in the digital age. But there's one more thing I wanted to touch on, his writing style.
What about it intrigues you?
Well, from the headlines I've seen, his writing seems very bold, attention-grabbing, even a bit sensationalistic at times. Is that an accurate assessment?
It is. Schwartz wasn't afraid to push the boundaries, to use strong language and imagery to capture attention. He knew that in a crowded marketplace, you had to stand out to get noticed.
Was that just a stylistic choice, or was there a strategic reason behind it?
It was definitely strategic. He understood that grabbing the reader's attention was the first step in getting them to engage with his message. Remember, he was working in a world where people were bombarded with advertising messages. He had to find a way to cut through the clutter and make his ads stand out.
So it was about getting people to stop and pay attention.
Yeah.
Even if it meant being a little bit provocative.
Exactly. But remember, he wasn't just trying to shock people for the sake of it.
Yeah.
He was using strong language and imagery to tap into those deep-seated desires and fears that we talked about earlier. He knew how to create a sense of urgency and make people feel like they had to take action now.
It's like he was using his writing as a scalpel, precisely targeting those emotional pressure points to elicit a response.
That's a great analogy. He was a master of using language to create an emotional impact, but he also understood the importance of backing up his claims with logic and evidence. He wasn't just trying to manipulate people, he was trying to persuade them by appealing to both their hearts and their minds.
So it was a balance between grabbing attention and building credibility.
Precisely, he knew that you can't just make wild promises without substantiating them. He had to build trust with his audience, and he did that by being both compelling and believable.
That's a valuable lesson for anyone who's trying to persuade or influence others. It's not just about being loud or flashy. It's about finding that sweet spot between grabbing attention and building trust.
Absolutely, and that's something that Schwartz did exceptionally well. He was a master of storytelling, of creating a narrative that drew the reader in and made them believe in what he was selling.
It's fascinating how all these different elements, the psychology, the marketing strategy, the writing style, all come together to create such a powerful and effective approach.
That's the beauty of studying the work of a master like Schwartz. You can see how all these different pieces fit together, how they reinforce each other to create something truly remarkable.
And the fact that we can access all this knowledge through this website, it's kind of mind-blowing.
I know.
It's like having a direct line to one of the greatest copywriters of all time.
It truly is a treasure trove of information, and I think one of the most valuable things we can learn from Schwartz is that the principles of persuasion are timeless.
Technology may change, platforms may change, but the fundamentals of human psychology remain the same.
Exactly. And if we can understand those fundamentals, we can become more effective communicators in any field.
And speaking of fields, I'm curious about how Schwartz's work has influenced the advertising we see today.
That's a great question and a perfect segue into the next part of our discussion. We've explored the foundations of Schwartz's brilliance, and now it's time to see how his legacy continues to shape the world of advertising, even decades after his most famous campaigns.
So we've been kind of traveling back in time, exploring the advertising world of Eugene Schwartz, but now let's fast forward to the present. What echoes of his genius can we find in today's advertising landscape?
You know, it's fascinating how even though the platforms have changed so much, right from print and direct mail to like online videos and social media posts, a lot of the principles that Schwartz used are still totally in play.
Like what? Give us some specific examples.
Okay, well, think about those like clickbait headlines we see all over the internet.
Oh, yeah.
The ones promising, life-changing secrets or shocking revelations.
Yeah.
They might be dressed up in modern digital garb, but they're using the same attention-grabbing techniques that Schwartz mastered.
So that Schwartzian boldness, that in-your-face style, it's still effective, even in the age of TikTok and Instagram.
It absolutely is in a world overflowing with information.
Right.
Grabbing someone's attention is the first battle.
Yeah.
And Schwartz was a master at that.
For sure.
He understood the power of a strong hook, of making a bold claim that stops people in their tracks.
And it's not just about shock value, right? He was also a master of, connecting with people's desires and fears.
Exactly. He knew how to tap into those deep-seated motivations that drive our decisions.
Right.
Think about those ads for online courses that promise to, transform your career or help you achieve financial freedom.
Oh, yeah.
They're not just selling information.
Right.
They're selling a vision of a better future, a solution to a deep-seated yearning.
It's like they're selling a feeling, an aspiration.
Aspiration.
Rather than just a product.
Precisely. And that's something Schwartz understood intuitively.
Yeah.
He knew that people buy based on emotion and then justify their decisions with logic. So he crafted his copy to evoke those emotions, to paint a picture of a world where your problems are solved and your desires are fulfilled.
And this ties back to his concept of mass desires, right?
Yeah.
The idea that certain fundamental desires are universal regardless of time or place.
Absolutely. Whether it's the desire for love, security status, or self-improvement, these desires are as potent today as they were in Schwartz's time. And advertisers are constantly finding new ways to tap into them.
So the next time I see an ad that makes me feel something, whether it's excitement, curiosity, or even a bit of fear, I should ask myself, what deeper desire is this ad trying to appeal to?
That's a great habit to develop. It helps you become a more discerning consumer, more aware of the persuasive techniques being used. And who knows, it might even inspire you to use those techniques yourself in your own writing and communication.
So attention-grabbing headlines appealing to deep-seated desires. What other echoes of Schwartz can we find in modern advertising?
Another one is the use of storytelling.
Okay.
Schwartz was a master of creating narratives that drew the reader in, made them feel like they were part of something bigger, He used vivid language, compelling characters, and emotional appeals to create a connection with his audience.
And that's something we see a lot in modern advertising, right? Especially with brands trying to build a strong identity or a loyal following.
Absolutely. Think about those commercials that tell heartwarming stories about family friendship or overcoming adversity.
Oh, yeah.
They're not just selling a product. They're selling an emotion, a sense of belonging.
It's like they're creating a mini-movie that we want to be a part of.
Exactly. And that's incredibly powerful. When you can connect with someone on an emotional level, you're much more likely to win them over.
So storytelling, appealing to emotions, creating a sense of connection, these are all techniques that Schwartz used masterfully, and they're still incredibly effective today.
They are, and that's why studying his work is so valuable. He provides a blueprint for effective communication regardless of the medium or the message.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about Schwartz being a results-driven marketer. How did he measure the effectiveness of his ads, especially in a pre-digital world?
That's a great question, and it highlights another important aspect of his genius. Schwartz was obsessed with tracking results. He used things like coupon codes and unique phone numbers to track how many people responded to each ad. He was constantly testing different approaches, tweaking headlines, copy, and layouts to see what generated the most responses.
So he was basically A/B testing before A/B testing was a thing.
Exactly. He understood that data was essential for improving his craft. He wasn't just relying on intuition or guesswork. He was using hard numbers to guide his decisions.
And that data-driven approach is even more important in today's digital world, where we have access to a wealth of information about how people are interacting with our content.
Absolutely. We can track clicks, conversions, engagement rates, and all sorts of other metrics, and that data can be incredibly valuable for optimizing our marketing efforts.
It's like having a real-time feedback loop telling us what's working and what's not. And it allows us to make adjustments on the fly.
Precisely. And that's something that Schwartz would have absolutely loved. He was a pioneer in using data to drive marketing decisions, and his legacy continues to inspire marketers today.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into the world of Eugene Schwartz. We've explored his techniques, his philosophy, and his lasting impact on the world of advertising.
And I think the biggest takeaway is that the principles of persuasion are timeless. Human psychology hasn't changed that much, and the techniques that worked for Schwartz decades ago are still incredibly effective today.
So whether you're writing a marketing campaign, crafting an email, or even just trying to be more persuasive in your everyday conversations, the lessons we can learn from Schwartz are invaluable.
They are, and I encourage everyone to explore his work further. Read his book, Breakthrough Advertising, study his ads, and see how you can apply his principles to your own communication.
It's like having a secret weapon in your persuasion arsenal.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe by understanding these techniques a little better, we can all become a bit more discerning consumers, a bit more immune to the manipulative tactics that are sometimes used in advertising.
That's a goal worth striving for. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and learned a thing or two along the way.
And remember, the best way to truly understand the power of Schwartz's work is to experience it firsthand. So go check out some of his ads, read his book, and see if you can spot those timeless principles in action.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those insightful questions. This is The Deep Dive signing off.